Welcome back to Historical Context. Today we continue our series on the colonies during the English Commonwealth. Today we shift gears from Virginia and we go back to Maryland. We last left off in Maryland with the appointment of William Stone as governor in 1649. Stone was appointed by Cecil Calvert, who back in England still held the patent to the colony despite being more aligned with the royalists than with the parliamentarians. And as we know, the parliamentarians were running the country at this time. Stone was a Puritan who lived in Virginia for 30 years. In fact, he was one of the first Puritans to come to America before Plymouth. But he left due to the colony's growing friction with their group. Stone had reached an agreement with Calvert to move his Puritan group to Maryland and found the city of Providence, later renamed Annapolis. According to the commission from Cecil Calvert to William Stone, the number of people that Stone was bringing with him from Virginia numbered around 500. And based on what we've read so far about America and these early days, I believe this migration of 500 was the largest at the time, if not one of the largest, within the American colonies. Calvert gave Stone the power to defend the colony by force if necessary, issue laws through the assembly process, and named him Chief Justice and Chief Magistrate, which gave him the ability to punish those who did not follow the laws. There were still some limitations to power. Let's have a look at the writing. Pardon or pardons extend not to the pardoning of William Claiborne, heretofore of the Isle of Kent, in our said Providence of Maryland, and now or late of Virginia, or of his accomplices in their late rebellion against our rights and dominion in and over the said province, nor of Richard Ingle, nor John Durford, mariners, nor of any person or persons whom we shall hereafter at any time think fit to accept from pardon by any act. So basically, Calvert is saying that the individuals that have been involved with rebellion in Maryland, and we've done several episodes on those, were not allowed to be pardoned by Governor Stone. There was also an oath written where the governor had to pledge allegiance to the Lord Proprietor of the colony, which was Lord Baltimore. The oath did not mention anything about England itself, which I found kind of interesting. The oath of the Council of Maryland, did mention the Privy Council, but that had been dissolved and turned into the Council of State by the Commonwealth. There were several other commissions issued, likely due to the threat of insurrection or invasion. One such commission was to the commander of Kent Island. In that commission, Calvert authorized the island's commander to assemble a council of 6 men. Stone did appoint former Governor Thomas Greene to be the colony's Lieutenant General Chancellor, and that likely helped some members of the colony adjust to the leadership transition. So former Governor Greene, still had a role in government. The General Assembly wasted no time in taking effective action under its new government. On April 21st, 1649, the colony passed the Toleration Act of 1649. Historians sometimes refer to it today as the Maryland Toleration Act, since it occurred in Maryland. The Toleration Act begins by criminalizing the blasphemy of God with punishment of death. Blasphemy of the Virgin Mary was to be punished by a fine of 10 shillings, or you would be publicly whipped if you didn't have the money. It was the next paragraph that made this law quite progressive for its time. Let's have a look at the writing. And be it also further enacted by the same authority, advise, and assent that whatsoever person or persons shall from henceforth upon any occasion of offense or otherwise in a reproachful manner or way declare, call, or denominate any person or persons whatsoever inhabiting, residing, trafficking, trading, or commercing within its province, or within the ports, harbors, creeks, or havens to the same. He continues, in a reproachful manner relating to manner of religion, shall for every such offense forfeit and lose the sum of 10 shillings sterling. Essentially there what they're saying is if you violate somebody else's religious practice or freedom, you would be fined 10 shillings. There are parentheses in the first writing there that we did, the first exhibit. If you're on the YouTube channel, you saw parentheses. And the reason I put those in is because in those parentheses, they actually named a number of ideologies. They named Puritan, Idolater, Presbyterian, Jesuit, Lutheran, Calvinist, Anabaptist, Brownist, Roundhead, and Separatist. If you speak offense of any of these, you are fined 10 shillings. And if you don't have the money, you're publicly whipped. This is the part of the law that lays out essentially protections for various religions. The law also outlawed drunkenness, swearing, and disorderly conduct on the Sabbath, with fines of 2 shillings 5 pence for the first offense, 5 shillings for the second offense, and 10 shillings for the third offense. The offender would also be jailed until a public apology for the first and second offenses, and whipped publicly for the third. Next, the law solidifies the protection of the religious colonists. Let's have a look. No person or persons whatsoever within this province thereunto belonging, professing to believe in Jesus Christ, shall from henceforth be anyways troubled, molested, or discountenanced for, or in respect of his or her religion, nor in the free exercise thereof within this province. The free exercise of religion. This provision also made it illegal to conspire against the civil government of the colony. This was included because of the insurrection that occurred in Maryland during the English Civil War. The punishment for violating this provision is 20 shillings, half to the colony and half to the offended party. Failure to pay would result in imprisonment and public whipping. The offended parties would receive 10 shillings. And I find that interesting because a question that would come up there is, would this actually encourage people to be offended or offended parties if they were going to get paid 10 shillings? We'll have to wait and see. The same assembly session also passed laws requiring title to be formally transferred when purchasing land from natives. It also included the outlawing of seditious speech against the colony's leadership, an act against fugitive indentured servants and the aiding and abetting of them, a law against breaching the peace with the natives, an act requiring the marking of hogs and cattle and making theft of them illegal, an act requiring each settler to plant 2 acres of corn, an act establishing duties on any hogs or cattle exported out of the colony, and the raising of an army to defend the colony against hostile natives. So this first General Assembly of the new Governor Stone was rather busy with the business of the colony. This seems like a very productive session and likely occurred before word came in of a change of government in England. On November 15th, 1649, a proclamation came declaring Charles II King of England. At this time, Charles II was operating out of Scotland, the only country within his kingdom that would host him. In January of 1650, Lord Baltimore was very preoccupied with the Council of State hearings regarding Captain Ingle and the Maryland colony. It is uncertain if these were criminal hearings or hearings regarding Captain Ingle's rite of passage, but at one point Edward Winslow was called as a witness, and he is a former colonist of Massachusetts Bay. The hearings would be delayed week after week through the month of February, and it's hard to tell why that actually happened. The issue would not be settled by the time the colony began its next General Assembly, which was in April of 1650. At that assembly, James Cox and George Puddington joined from the newly formed Puritan town of Providence, named after Roger Williams and later renamed Annapolis. And these two Puritans must have been rather respected because James Cox was named Speaker of the House. The significance of the 1650 legislature in Maryland is that it was bicameral, meaning that two legislative bodies existed, as was authorized by Lord Baltimore. One legislative body was burgesses selected amongst the cities, and the other was a council selected by the governor. And the governor's council had already existed prior to that, but basically now they had formal legislative authority and acted in parallel to the burgesses. There were orders created to help organize the business of both houses of the legislature, and among those orders were that speakers were to stand when presenting, could not be interrupted, that bills were to be read 3 different times before being voted on, and nobody is to enter either house of the legislature armed. One bill of significance in the legislature was a bill labeled, and I quote, "Relief for the Poor." The bill was designed to help support those who were maimed, lame, or blind persons. This was the first instance of social welfare or poverty relief I've seen in our writings thus far. So I think that's an interesting point in an interesting time period, 1650 Maryland. Another bill of significance was the banning of, quote, compliance with Captain Claiborne. Another law banned natives from certain territories. By August of 1650, word on the death of Charles I came into Maryland, and the government responded by passing an act recognizing the lawful title of Lord Baltimore to the province of Maryland. Let's have a look. To maintain, uphold, and defend your lordship, and your heirs, lords, and proprietaries of this province, in all the royal rights, jurisdictions, authorities, and preeminences, given, granted, and confirmed unto your lordship by the said grant and donation so far as they do not in any sort infringe or prejudice the just and lawful liberties or privileges of the freeborn subjects of the Kingdom of England. So they are standing behind Lord Baltimore. And Maryland is essentially following Virginia in not recognizing the parliamentary government, and it is doubling down on Lord Calvert. In October, the Council of State, now that's in England, controlled by the parliamentarians, they weigh in. Let's have a look. The council, having received the petition and papers presented by Mr. Henn Wallace on behalf of diverse well-affected persons of the Isle of Providence in Maryland, think fit to declare that as the Parliament have already expressed themselves sensible of the condition of the plantation abroad, depending upon this Commonwealth, and now lately ordered the bringing in the patents of the pretending proprietors. Oh no, that's not looking good. They go on. To be considered of so this council, according to their trust in that behalf, will proceed to take care of the welfare of those plantations, and of such there as retain their integrity and good affection to the Parliament and present government. And finally, and do for the present refer the matters be remonstrated to Mr. Wallace to a committee of their own number to debate the same and present their opinion to the council for further consideration. So the council is going to be taking the matter of Maryland's ownership on, but the use of the word pretender, proprietor, does not make things sound very good for Lord Baltimore and Company. Next week we continue here in Maryland and we see how things progress. And what's interesting here is that outside influences do come in, but surprisingly they're not necessarily from England. And we'll talk about that next time on Historical Context.